out of our hair.
Any questions or comments from the council, and when ready, entertain and we'd ask someone to introduce the resolution.
I'll introduce resolution.
Alright, the resolution has been introduced and is designated resolution number 2023-2. Would anyone like to move that this resolution be passed and adopted?
So
Second.
The motion and a second, is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
voting in favor, Wilkin, Taylor, Tanyas, Coulterman, Miller, Singleton, Morgan, 7-0.
Alright, item 4, consideration of an agreement with the Nebraska Municipal Power Pool and NPP to perform a financial plan, cost of service, and rate design study related to city utility services. Greg.
Annually or biannually, we work with Nebraska Municipal Power Pool to perform our financial plan. This is some of the information that we use to build the budget, make recommendations. One of the considerations in making recommendations in regards to utilities and utility rates. They also provide us what we should look at for cash reserves and other related items. They do a full study of the system and then review it after 1 year. We haven't done one of these in a while because of COVID and some other items, but the recommendation from myself and Nick Wolf, Finance Director, was to continue pursuing these. They do draft and help put together all of our ordinances and other filings that we do for utility rates. And so we do find good value in it. We have a good team working under Andrew Ross at NMPP to get this done and get all the information from us. I can answer any specific questions. We are looking to do both the electric, water, and wastewaters combined. So,
Any comments or questions for Greg?
I have one. The NMPP then, when they do their study, they bring in member cities? Is it just the ones that are already members? Like, I noticed on here that there's several from Nebraska, and then there's several from the states around us.
yep.
The study?
Their study that they take a look at, again, their study is more predominantly based on financial need. It has a lot of metrics in it, but it's predominantly looking at, are you building a budget and have a healthy rate to accommodate your outlook and what you want to do?
Okay.
Or at least meet what that outlook looks like over your 5-year capital plan and things like that, your debt service, all the other elements that go in as they build this. The other cities that you see there, the client references and stuff, that's more for the information they provide back. That's part of their continuing elements of being part of NMPP. We will get a survey from them. And it usually comes in the spring. I may have to check with Nick, we may have it. But it basically lists all of their membership and their corresponding utility rates. And so they'll have one that shows all the populations, one that shows each rate, and then they'll categorize those rates. So they may say a residential rate that uses this much per cubic foot or gallons per month, and then gives you the rate per that. And they show it at different levels, industrial levels, commercial levels. So
Okay.
they will provide that comparison. They don't specifically use it in building your rate though. It's that, those are kind of two separate things.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions for Greg?
I move to approve.
Give a motion for approval, is there a second?
Second.
Give a motion and a second, is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Wilkin, Taylor, Tanyas, Coulterman, Miller, Singleton, Morgan, 7-0.
Alright, item 5, consideration of a professional services agreement with Clark and Anderson for Phase 1 Conceptual Facility Master Plan for the Civic Center renovation project. Greg.
Yeah, as I was working with the Civic Center Commission, Senator Coulterman, it's so weird.
He needs some projects.
I'm
This is a
also-
great project.
When I mentioned Coulterman and Civic Center, I really just wanted to defer to Gene. But Gene is no longer chair, but in title, we'll say. But one of the predominant things that you've known, especially for our more senior council members, is that we've been working to try and renovate, especially the older portion of the Civic Center for years, specifically tackling the ADA issue that we would really like to see resolved so that you can transition between the main first floors seamlessly, especially for most of our patrons that tend to, if that was an easier transition, that would be more accommodating. But definitely looking at ADA accessibility. in looking through that, we also had the issues in the last few years of plumbing, HVAC issues. The boiler is basically on the outs, on that older side of the building. We need a full redo of some of those systems. We're also finishing up kind of the situation with SCCDP to make sure we understand where their home will ultimately be. Do we consider moving them off to the alternate site that was bought by the city on the block? You know, all these different things. And so by working with Clark Anderson, we can get a final plan put together and then turn it over to a contractor and execute it. We originally talked about doing a design build, but when we looked through the timeline, we felt like it was actually faster, since these are professional services, to just get the design done and go. Senator Coltman reached out to Clark Anderson. We had spoken with him about the wellness center. They have experience in the past, and we were able to, as you can see there, some of you might be familiar with Matt Glowitz, former mayor, Roger Glowitz's son, who now works for Clark Anderson. He will be our lead on this one and does incredible work. And so we were really excited to get an opportunity to work with Matt on this and to be a part of something to give back to the community he grew up in. And so, not that was anything specific, but just those connections and that deep understanding of what that building has meant over years and over time, just kind of put them out in front of us first. Again, these are professional services. We don't need to specifically go out for an RFP or RFQ. We felt like Clark Anderson can execute on the vision. There's a unanimous, I believe, recommendation from the Civic Center Commission to approve this. And I think their committee, they have a subcommittee that's really ready to get going on this. I help serve on that, and as does Aaron. And so we'll be off and running, and they'll probably have a pretty decent master plan for us by early fall, late summer, I think, is what the timeline looks like.
Any other questions or comments for Greg?
Long time coming, so approved, motion.
Motion.
Second.
The motion and a second for approval. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Wilkin, Taylor, Tanya, Coltman, Miller, Singleton, Morgan, 7-0.
Alright, next, item 6, update on the wellness center.
Wellness Center. Where are we at now? We received some of the first preliminary numbers from Sampson as they're kind of getting adjusted to the final schematic design. And so now we're gonna begin the process to kind of do that value engineering and go back and see what things we can adjust. Now we know what their specific costs are and what the alternatives are. So we're gonna work back and forth between the design committee and the design team and get that kind of anchored down. And then we'll probably bring you the first recommended cost estimate at the presentation, probably first thing in May, late April. We'll just have to see when they get their work done and it's approved. And so we're starting to work through that. Pool design is still ongoing, but they're gonna come back, I believe, in another week with our first look at what we gave them in regards to our concept and design. 6-lane competition pool. We settled on 7-foot depth rather than 6. The reason for that was Tasha, with the who does all our Red Cross training, is also the president of the swim club. Said at 7 foot I can train lifeguards that can operate all of our pools at any point in time. So if you want to train them in the winter, and they can work at the lifeguarding at the wellness center, and then transition right over to the outdoors at the municipal pool outside in Moffett Park. And so if we had it at 6, they could only do that facility. They would have to fully retrain doing their lifeguard training again out at the outdoor pool. And so we said, for 1 foot down, that's actually worth our time. It makes it efficient for those lifeguards, and so we wanted to keep that going. Other than that, we've kind of settled on right now taking a look at what they call a channel current, lazy river, but a little smaller. You don't get in it with your daiquiri drink and your giant floaty and float around all over. But you know, it's used for that resistance training. It's great for kids. They like to jump in it with their flotation devices on and go around. Adults can too. I'm sure they can enjoy it that way. But that's the 2 main mechanisms we're looking at. Probably some elements of a slide could be put in later, but for cost purposes, we just think meeting that goal, that's one of the stated goals of the Wellness Center Design Committee, is maximum use of spaces. A slide, probably used mostly by kids, maybe by Greg. but that channel current kind of lazy river has, you know, physical therapy opportunities, it has opportunities for kids, it has it's just utilized by a lot more people, and that's what we've heard from the other communities that do have it, and then the ones that don't say they wish they would have had that instead. So, zero degree entry is the puzzle they're trying to solve. We'd still like to have that versus some of the other options. It's just a more efficient way to get in the pool, a little more accommodating rather than trying to jump down a ladder or, you know, having the ADA lift chairs and stuff. And so we're just working through those issues because that's kind of the last little bit. So within the decking space. We've seen some inside renderings. We're not ready to show those yet, but it's neat to see it, especially since we've reoriented it, basically flipped it completely end over end. You get a little disoriented until you see it, and then it makes sense how you kind of move about through the building. Working through with the Wake family in regards to the plat. Hopefully we'll get that resolved. There is some
Looks like it.
easement issues that Kelly and I have been working on with Northern Natural Gas up there that we want to get resolved, but not make or break, just needs to be cleaned up. And then lastly, we did complete some of the first round of executive director interviews. So I think in the batch of candidates that we interviewed so far, at least, that I think, yeah, a lot of great possible candidates. We're still getting applications in, so we're just kind of beating through that and then work through the rest of the interview process, make some follow-ups, and then make a selection. So then we'll announce it. So, but again, reminder, that's not a mayor's appointment. That's an internal administrative position, department head, and so when we make the selection, we'll send that out to the council and mayor first, and then let the public know. That's what's going on at the wellness center right now. We did receive notification that we did not receive the CCCFF grant for $500,000. We were notified that we did not get that one. It was incredibly competitive. Waverly, I think, was the only local community of our size in the Send area that got that kind of money, and that was for their pool project that was much needed. So, and I don't think they received shovel ready. Again, I know they weigh these each individually, but if you look at what is getting state funds right now, I don't think that.
This group gets this, but this group
Yep.
gets this, and they do look at across the board, they really do.
I don't want to say they do, but you know, it looks like they're trying to help out, accommodate as many communities as possible, and so we've already gotten one of the really big ones out there. But we'll continue to search for funds and work through funds, especially once we tie down the budgetary numbers and know if we do have a little shortfall in what we expected. I can answer any questions on the wellness center.
Seeing none, we can move on to the city administrator's report. Alright, hang on a second, I skipped the council.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, John, geez. I wonder why you don't know. Like, I clearly missed something. This was actually John Singleton's request. He had wanted a discussion and consideration of the current commercial burn site fees, and so Greg had some research done on this to kind of give you an idea.
Again, a little bit informal on the survey results back here. I anticipated finishing this up this morning in regards to presentation, and then something else blew up, not physically, but something happened, one of those things. And so, but we do have this that Mindy put together, and I just tried to, in my evening here before we came, try to get a little resolve. We did contact Crete, York, Wahoo, Schuyler, Gretna, Beatrice, Fairbury, Plattsmouth, Blair, Nebraska City, Aurora, and Wayne. If you would look, those are actually our comparable communities that we use for comparability. So they're predominantly the same size, either twice the size of us or half the size of us, and within a concentric circle, so they're some of the closest communities in that size. Most of them, about half of them actually, do operate a municipal burn site. The communities that don't are Gretna, Beatrice, Plattsmouth, Blair, even though they have twice a year, they do have a burning, but and then Wayne and Nebraska City has a brush pile, yes, but they chip and shred it and pay a company to do that. That's extremely expensive, correct, Bob? It's about $50,000 a pop.
Yeah.
And so, if you think of every time we burn the burn pile, how many times are we burning right now? that's $50,000 times 6 times a year. So it would cost us $300,000 to chip all of the material we're getting. So, kind of gives us a rough idea what's going on. The next question is, do they have a burn site? When you ask them this, sometimes when they say a municipal burn site, that may be a site that they utilize for themselves to burn rather than place it into some sort of landfill or anything else. And so, is it open to the public? Predominantly, the ones that have them is yes. A lot of them say Fairbury then hauls it somewhere and burns it. So they put the impetus on themselves to haul it, which is not probably the best idea. That could be expensive. Thinking about how much we just hauled there. I can't even imagine what it would cost us to haul it somewhere else. Let people dump it there, and then we pick it back up, and then we take it somewhere else. That would be a huge burden. Let's see. The next question we did ask was, do you operate a lawn and compost site? As you remember when we talked about this, one of our issues is the compost site is directly next door to the burn site. Well, if you know how compost works, it gets very warm. So one thing that happens is sometimes that literally self-combusts. If we don't have enough room to work it over there and churn it and try to get some of the heat out of it and get it to do the things that composting needs to have take place, it will basically compost inside of itself and then self-combust. The other element of that is it takes very little spark from the burn site or ashes or wind to blow over into that thing at just the right time, and now your compost site is on fire again. So all of this is to the chagrin of the volunteer fire department. If they needed a training opportunity, yeah, it's great. They don't. And so, because what we find is there's no water access down there. And it would be exorbitant to try and take water down there right now. We did try and take a look at Rummery's property to see if we could accommodate for future development what we thought was going to happen, but there's not enough of a plan there. And it's unfair to Jerry to say, well, we're just going to put the water main here and you're going to have to work around it, so that we can put a fire out next to his property all the time. And so that's also probably until a more formalized development was there that we could accommodate that, but put it in so it could be used later for a real purpose.
How many keys are out right now that we've rented out there?
Good estimate.
Say probably, I think we have about 25 out to city. I think we have probably about 55 out to public.
Keys?
Yep.
Wow.
Somewhere in that range.
And that was my biggest concern, because, we wanna make sure we have something for the future, and I feel that, the tree companies are making money. They do make good money, bringing down a tree, and if they have to pay a little bit, so we have a little bit of money to pay the Saturday guy when he's out there, I think kind of to offset it, I think it would be beneficial to the city. In my opinion, for a commercial user to have to pay $500 a year for a key, they're making $4,000 every tree they cut down. So I'm just trying to support our residents, when they have a place to go, and these other ones that are doing it for commercial business, they're making buku bucks on us. And maybe that'll slow it down so we don't get as much. And everybody in town will always have a place to go. That's where I'm looking at. So
I think,
don't wanna make Josh's dad mad at us, so they don't have a place to take his yard waste.
another reason to be disappointed.
I wonder,
Well, but there's a couple issues to John's point. One is obviously, figuring out what we're gonna charge,
Yeah.
and figuring out, who do we want to have access to it. There's also, the issue of making sure that when there is an issue, meaning someone drops a couch down there when no one's looking, is how do we, regulate that? And then the third issue would be, is this the right location for this? Or, originally, when I think we first talked about doing the compost, because the burn site's been there for a long
Years.
time.
Yeah.
The compost was something relatively new, and it was because, you know, you have a lot of people, it wasn't really intended necessarily for commercial dumping there. It was just for, you know, where do you take your leaves? You know, you could pay for a service during, you know, from the garbage company, but for leaves and grass, where, you know, where do you take those? And, you know, and I know people that take them out to farms. They have friends who are farmers, they take them out there and they dump them somewhere out there. And the idea was just to have a convenience for people. Again, it would only, for those without keys, it would only be on Saturday, but at least on the weekend, they'd have an opportunity where if they wanted to, they could utilize that. And then, you know, over time, it became more, I guess, got bigger and bigger, and then some of the combustion issues started happening. So I think for purposes of discussion, I think part of it, you know, the simplest is actually, you know, what to charge people. You just pick a number, you know. My arbitrary number is just as good as your arbitrary number. You know, picking a number. That's not really the controversial part of this, unless you get to rates that are so high that it becomes a deterrent for people to use it. The real question is what do you see for the future of this? You know, as a city, obviously, it's a little bit trickier than for the county, maybe, for example, because to be within our city limits, you're gonna be relatively close, usually to residential, other people who might be impacted by burning it, by the smoke. But you also wanna be close enough to have access, so if the fire department needs to get out there, and for the convenience of residents, you don't necessarily want it too far away. But, you know, some conversation may need to happen with the county is there a location maybe just outside of Seward, even if it's within our ETJ, or not, is what does that look like? Moving forward, because I do think we are probably outgrowing that area, especially with the compost being part of that. So,
And my concern about, one of the reasons is because of the commercial side. And maybe if we put a higher fee for them to use it, it would slow down on the combustion side, because it might slow down as much wood that we're getting out there. I mean, the city takes stuff out there now, I know that too, but it's the commercial haulers.
and my guess is they're not gonna care.
Yep.
My guess is if you made it $1,000, I mean, to your point, if it's $4,000 you're charging for a tree, even if you made it, you know, $4,000 a year,
Cut one more tree down.
cut one more tree
Right.
down. I mean, because of the convenience is so great.
But
So,
but
yeah.
at least we're gonna, say we do $500 a year to have that key.
Mhm.
At least we've got an income to support the guy that's standing out there Saturday from 8 to noon. We can pay that with no problem, even if it's one of Bob's workers, and we can give him a little more money to be standing out there for 4 hours, and we're supplementing. Because if you've got 20-some keys out there, that's gonna pay for a lot of salary for a Saturday for 4 hours.
The other one is the commercials are also, we have no clue where that material's coming from.
Right.
So you have commercial haulers that are picking up your grass from in front of your house and loading it into something and then driving it out there and dumping it in our compost, correct, Bob?
Yeah.
And so all we're doing is subsidizing that as a city. With, they're making all the profit and paying, what's a commercial?
$200
They're
for
paying $200.
out of Seward, so it's even less than that.
Well, there is some in Seward, correct?
Yeah,
So you can be from outside of Seward, run a commercial hauling company to haul yard waste across the entire city, and you're paying $200 to go dump it in our site so they can be our problem when it catches on fire.
So for the commercial
That-
haulers, for the yard waste, why don't we jack it up so we have a place for our people in town to go do it? Cause that should slow them down if we increase it tremendously.
Or it gets passed on to
I
the
was gonna
people
say,
that use the
pass on,
service.
yeah.
Yeah, I know, but, you know, I'm just trying to,
No, it's not a simple
Yeah, this is
issue.
not,
We've been, I don't want you to think we haven't thought about this before.
Right.
They're laughing in the back. This is a common, you know, discussion, especially when we're saying they're watching it on fire. We're thinking maybe we should do something about this in the future. But I think, you know, I think ultimately the question may just be is one, do we want to continue having a burn pile and the compost pile? And if two, if we do, is maybe we need to relocate one or both to an area that's a little bit less of an issue.
and like I said, you're also subsidizing material that's coming in from who knows where. it potentially is the entire county. They could go around and cut down trees and go pick up people's lawn clippings from anywhere, and they're dumping it in the site to be our tax base's problem. That is the weird give and take of what's going on here, and for nearly next to nothing.
Yeah, John?
I don't wanna see us get rid of this, ever. We have plenty of ground that we've gotten from FEMA, with FEMA dollars, that we own a lot. And for us to take something like that away from our mom and dads that have been taking it out there for years, I ain't gonna be the one to tell them no, that they ain't gonna do it no more. I'm gonna point it right to Josh every time, because he's gonna have to defend it.
Tough crowd tonight. Bob, is it warm in here? You get warm?
Personally, I don't think you have to get rid of it, but
No.
the true solution to eliminating this massive amount of material that's coming in is either A, you say commercial haulers can't do it, and you man it every hour that it's open. There is no keys, but it's open, and we'll man it, we'll pay somebody with the fees we do make, and you do that. That's what you see in York. That's why they take all of it out to their joint solid waste agency. There's some others that say we just do it by the truckload. It's manned, but we don't do a waste station like they do in York. Because we looked at York. We did the calculation, Derek, myself, Bob, and Mindy. And for a standard tree company, we did all the metrics based on, I think, a 10 cubic yard truck like we would haul out there. It was like $50,000 in fees a year.
Wow.
To dump. That you're subsidizing for everybody that does that. And we came out, I think we were cutting like 3 trees a week, 4 trees a week.
Yeah, not very many.
You know, a big tree that we would use, it'd take us about three dump trucks loads to take a tree out of town.
Yeah, on average.
And so we just did all the math on it based on what that weighs, based on FEMA standards and stuff like that. It's like a $50,000 savings that you're subsidizing. And I'm not trying to do it to the detriment, because you know, anything you pass on, they're just gonna pass that price on to you if you increase the fees. It's really trying to, what are we identifying the problem? I think Councilmember Singleton is identifying some of the problem, which is helping support the cost of having somebody out there on the weekends and things like that. But the long-term solution to why we have to burn the thing 6 times a year, and why there's so much material in there, and where it's coming from and who's doing it, the simple solution to that is not so simple.
And we're never gonna get rid of having storms. I mean, that's just.
And that's a different, when we have storms, we, just like we do now, we'll go in on a Wednesday and say, burn site's just open. Just go in and take your stuff, it's fine. But to meet the level of regulation, if you didn't want every trash company that works in the county coming through and just dumping, you know.
That's the disappointing side, it really is. It should be just for Seward, not for other counties to come here and just dump, that's just.
Well, there's no regulation, all we
I know.
say is if you're out of town, it costs $200.
Right.
You could run all of Lincoln if it was economical and dump it out here, and we couldn't do anything about it. Not trying to give bad ideas, but we don't check and we don't know. Correct, Bob?
That's correct.
So, if you want us to bring back an increase in the fee and up it to 500, I think that was the number that's thrown out. We can bring that
Yeah.
as a resolution. I think this is resolution based, correct, Derek? Or is it not?
I didn't find it on the resolution anywhere, like our fees,
Yeah.
or I not located that
My
anywhere.
preference is always, if we're gonna do fees, we should have a resolution somewhere. And so we can bring it back in 2 weeks and have a specifically drafted up resolution that will have all the fees associated with it, and then up the commercial one, to 500.
And it can always be amended at the meeting, so
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that that's locked in.
Do
so.
we state for a key, and then do we put another fee in there per truckload for yard waste? Now, I ain't worried about trees, but for yard waste, do we wanna start saying so much a load?
We don't have anybody there.
That's our only
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
We don't have, the other question is when you start charging per load, now we have to somehow have a mechanism to do transactions. Whether that's, we write you down and then we bill you later, but when mom and, you know, we have to have somebody out there doing that. Somebody out here wrote they just do the trust system.
I mean.
Hey, just tell us at the end of the month how many did you take in there. I took one. I don't know. I'm not trying to make light of, but I mean, it's literally what was in one of these.
But at least to start,
responses.
you know, I don't see any of the others charging even $500. At least we're starting to do something. Or is 500 not enough?
Like you said, we can draft something with 500 in it, and then the council can decide at the meeting if they like it or if they wanna amend it. I mean, we might even, we can even leave it blank and you just pick a number. I mean, it doesn't matter. The council has the full authority
Yeah,
to address that at the next meeting.
To me, I think 500 is a good start, and then see where it goes.
Derek, do we differentiate between commercial and individuals?
We do.
The other one is that point, what point do you push it so far that they try to take the risk and say, hey, I do run as Greg's Lawn Care, but $500 versus what's an individual one in town?
Nothing.
Like, I think 75.
Save myself $425, just put it under my own name.
For the key, right?
Yep.
For the key.
Yeah, on Saturdays there's.
Right,
yeah.
not Saturdays, this for the key.
So right
For
now
the
we have-
key,
I was
and
gonna
so the higher you get that, the more it's gonna push the lower tier commercial users. The kid that goes around, has his own lawn care business somehow, he's in his 20s in the summer, mows lawns and has one trailer, he's paying $500, and then your literal commercial refuse hauler that picks up 400 people across town every week, they're also trying to, and so that's, you're not gonna scope this thing unless you man it out there, have a way to do transactions or keep track of it and invoice people.
Yeah, so
You're not gonna be able to spread the cost evenly amongst
Yeah.
the users to how much they're actually using it in the volume.
But-
Cause we talked about, you know, you could do a waste station, then it's fair. Whatever you bring out, you're paying for how much it is. Truckloads, we could say, hey, a commercial refuse hauler truck is this many cubic feet, your pickup's this many cubic feet, and your little trailers are this, and we mark them down and send it out. I mean, there's a lot of ways to do it, but it takes the person being out there to monitor it.
But I think we just need to start, you know, on the Saturdays that we're out there once a Saturday, well, it'll be open every Saturday here pretty soon,
Start already.
for only a few months. But as long as we start with the key rental, I mean, if we have almost 30 keys out there, if we just start with that, that's where I would really like to start to see it.
Any other discussion?
We'll bring a resolution.
I just have a question how that works then. Do you take away their keys and give them a new key, or it's just a? an
The problem
invoice
is,
we send out?
this is late enough now in the year, we've already charged them.
Okay, got it.
So my personal opinion
Renewal.
unfortunately is that when they renew next year, we would probably charge them, and anyone that picked up a new one.
Right.
So
It's
you
not-
never got one this year,
Mhm,
and you come in July and you wanna get the commercial, alright, you're paying the new rate, sorry.
okay,
We have a cauldron, we just melt it right in front of you.
figured, I was just curious, we're gonna melt them down and remake them, what are
Right,
we gonna do? Yeah.
Exactly.
Usually what happens is somebody gets mad at the lock out there, they break it, and then there's no way to get replacements for the lock. And then we have to issue new keys to everybody anyway, and call them all back in and get them sorted out to the chagrin of the city hall staff. So,
If that's all, we will move on then. Thank you for the discussion. Next we have city administrator's report.
yeah. A lot of stuff on there, we're right in the middle of evals. Big kudos to Derek and the work he's done in adjusting our evaluation system and working with the administration on that. We're excited to roll out that also with the target goals and the work by the staff and department heads to review that. And so that will go out, but that takes up this time period right now. We're all meeting with our staff and going through that process twice a year, and so that eats up quite a few hours for everybody to work through that, get the paperwork turned in. For me and Derek to go through all the paperwork. Still, again, wastewater treatment plant's a big one, looking at some financing, funding options. Wellness center is the same. Just a lot of big projects moving around and back and forth through right now. I can answer any specific questions you have on anything I have in my report.
Any questions for Greg? If not, I entertain a motion to accept the report.
So moved.
Second?
Motion and second, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Wilken, Kaler, Tanya, Coulterman, Miller, Singleton, Morgan, 7-0.
Alright, do you have any future requests for council agenda items or administrative action? Seeing none. Jonathan, you're hiding in the back.
I'm here.
Welcome. What do you got for us?
That easily. All right, upcoming events. Thursday, April 13th, business after hours for Allo Communications, Esquire Words from 4 to 6. I hope you can join us to network and get updates about Allo's progress on their construction efforts in Seward and Milford. Saturday, April 15th, the annual cleanup day is being hosted at the City of Seward's Horseshoe facility on South Columbia from 8 to noon. Please spread the word and thanks for the partnership on that annual event. Tuesday, Friday, April 21st is the Concordia Catalyst Competition Business Plan Night starting with a reception in Dunklau Center on campus at 6 p.m. You're welcome to join us with that. And then Thursday, April 27th is the annual Business Anniversaries Luncheon, where we celebrate businesses and organizations at 5-year increments from 5-year anniversaries up to 150 years and everything in between. We'll be at the Seward Civic Center starting at 11:30 a.m. And please consider joining us to support Seward County's business community at this important annual celebration, and you can RSVP to our office if you plan to attend. Lastly, our organization ended up fundraising $378,000 in pledges towards a rural workforce housing fund application, which was turned in on March 23rd. We'll know by mid-May if we receive funding, which would create a 1.134 revolving loan fund to assist in constructing approximately 71 new housing units in Seward County. With that, that's all I have.
Thanks, Jonathan. Yeah.
Yes.
One thing that Seward Waste would like you to do is, one thing, the counties aren't, going for the grants for the tires. And it's only been Celine been doing it, then Seward hasn't done it in many years. You have to apply for that grant, I think it's in September for the next year, so
Yes.
they were wanting me to challenge you to go for that grant, possibly September, so Seward
Yes.
County can have one maybe next year.
I appreciate that note, and yes, I have talked briefly to Terry, highway superintendent, about that, so we're hoping to collaborate on that.
Yeah, cause they put in a grant for like 300,000 and they ended up on like 500,000 tons. So, get a lot of tires. That's the Celine, so what about Seward?
John, would you like a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second, you guys do your votes. Please pay the votes.
Voting in favor, Wilken, Kaler, Tanya, Coulterman, Miller, Singleton, Morgan, 7-0.
I figured you're on a roll, I wanted to take advantage
Well,
of
I
it.
don't know where the county's taking all their tires. They must have taken the Celine.